I'm Alexis, aka The Self Reader, and I'm here today to do my November wrap-up. I read 6 books in the month of November, 4 of which I had arcs for. For the most part, really enjoyed everything. I read my lowest rating of the month, with this a 3.5, so we'll just go ahead and get into it. The first one I'm going to mention is The Hanging Girl by Eileen Cook. The story is about our main character, Skye, who is a fake psychic. She actually reads tarot cards for people and then makes money off of that. And in this story, a young girl actually gets kidnapped and goes missing, and Skye tells the police that she is having visions about where this young girl might be, because she's actually involved in the kidnapping. And it all goes from there as she's like getting tangled up in this investigation, giving these clues to the police at the instructions of the kidnapper. I ended up giving this one a 3.5 stars. It was just okay to me. I've definitely read better YA thrillers. I know a lot of people complain about the diversity in the story because they say it feels unnecessary. That was not a hindrance to my whether or not I enjoyed the story, so I don't really understand people complaining about that. But I will say I was actually spoiled for the major plot twist in this book because of a person on Goodreads. So I was majorly spoiled for the main plot twist in this book. And so knowing that, I picked up on all of the clues that were led you to believe what the twist actually was. There's a lot of hints in the book, and once I noticed them, I realized how many of them there were. So basically every chapter, the author is telling you what's going on. It's really hammered in. So I feel pretty confident that even if I hadn't been spoiled for the book, I would have been able to figure it out, because I'm not kidding you, every chapter the author basically tells you what's going on. And so I obviously gave it a 3.5 stars. I don't think it's a terrible book. I think a lot of other people would definitely enjoy it. Just maybe avoid spoilers. The next book I completed in the month of November was The Memory Trees by Callie Wallace. You guys know I was so excited for this book, having loved Callie Wallace's debut novel. This basically follows our main character, Sorrow, who is moving back to the Vermont orchard she grew up in after leaving for 8 years following the death of her sister. And Sorrow is deciding to return to the orchard to try and jog her memory to see if she can remember what exactly happened to her sister. And in the grander scheme of things, we're also following 12 generations of this family and their interactions with another family in this town, and kind of how the histories between them ultimately end up affecting what's happening with Sorrow. This book definitely has the same creepy atmospheric writing that Callie Wallace is really known for, and it's a writing I really love. I love just the mood and the tone of the book and how well it's portrayed. There's a lot going on in this book, and I don't ultimately feel like all of it was necessary. I really liked Sorrow's story of trying to figure out what exactly happened to her sister, and I loved the parts about the Lovegood family going back 12 generations. You actually get chapters in this book from perspectives of the women who have lived previously, and I really enjoyed those chapters. But as much as I enjoyed those chapters, I don't feel like they really added anything to the story. There's also a couple of other subplots in this, such as the relationship between Sorrow and her mother. Her mother is suffering from a mental illness, and it's about how that's put a strain on their relationship. There's also parts in here about the relationship Sorrow has with her dad and her stepmom, and kind of how she's put a strain on their marriage with her almost obsessiveness regarding what happened to her sister. And while I think those two were both handled well, I just don't feel like they added anything to the story. It was, this is a 415 page book, and I feel like that right there was 100 pages that I don't feel like needed to be in the story. I don't feel like they added anything to the mystery of what happened to Patience, or even to Sorrow's character growth, because it ended up being a lot about other characters growing. This book is kind of difficult to get through because there's so much going on, and it's not all necessarily related to the main plot. For that reason, I did give it a 3.5 stars. I still highly recommend it. I still think if you're looking for a very atmospheric story that has a little bit of a fantastical element into it, I do recommend this. The next one I'm going to mention was my big audiobook project of the month, and that is The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. I'll just go ahead and tell you guys right off the bat, I gave this 3.5 stars. My main hindrance with this series is that I don't like two of the main characters, and I don't like the main romance in this series. I know a lot of people like Ven, and I know a lot of people like Eland, but I don't really like either one of them. My main hindrance with Ven is that Ven to me reads like a teenage girl written by a grown man. I don't personally connect to anything about Ven. There's nothing about Ven that really like gets to me. Like, there's a couple of scenes in the previous book and still in this book where we literally see Ven change her opinion of things based on Eland. And I hate that. I really, really dislike that. And it's just like her whole freaking character is about Eland. And I hate that so much. And like, so I don't like Ven, and I don't like Eland, because Eland feels like a character I've seen 100 times before, so I don't like their romance. And considering that is such a huge part of this, oh man, this series to me, we have a very love-hate relationship. All of that aside, the side characters in this series are so good. I love the side characters in the series. Sazed is is my favorite character. I would take a bullet for Sazed in a heartbeat. Like, I just love his character, and especially like at the end of this book, like the places his character goes. I really like the character of Orsir. I hope we get to see more of Orsir in the next book. But I loved his character in this book, and I really liked his character and the relationship he had with Ven as they slowly, you know, come to be friends of a sort. I really, really liked that. I really like a lot of the political intrigue in this book. It kind of does literally go all over the place with political intrigue, but I think that's a niche for Brandon Sanderson. But you can tell that this is a very complicated world. I really like the magic in it, so it's like, I really like the world and I like the story. I just wish that like Ven and Eland weren't in it. Unpopular opinion, but I don't like either of them. The next book I'm going to mention is Here We Are Now by Jasmine Warga, and this basically follows our main character Talia, who has always grown up with her Jordanian mother. Talia starts writing letters to a famous rock star saying like, hey, I think I'm your daughter. And so one day when she's 16, he actually appears on her doorstep and is like, hey, I think I'm your dad. And she basically goes on a trip with him because his father is dying, and so he wants Talia to meet her grandfather before he passes away. It's a very short book. It's only about 300 pages or so, but there's a lot of little sweet moments in this book that I just absolutely loved. I ended up giving it 4 stars. I really liked Talia as a character. She felt like a teenager to me. You know, she had a lot of really valid feelings, but you could see her, you know, kind of self-absorbed in her head where she's like, well, this is going on to me, and she couldn't see beyond like what was happening with her. And I think that that's a pretty realistic teenager emotion. I also did read an article from Jasmine Warga where she talked about her own experiences and how they fed into this novel. This book is own voices for the main character being half Jordanian, because Jasmine Warga herself is half Jordanian. In this novel, we get to see the main character dealing with that, dealing with having like an immigrant parent, but also dealing with like a sense of isolation she feels because of like who her parents are. And overall, I really, really liked this. The only reason I gave it 4 stars. The only reason I didn't like absolutely love it is because there is a romance that is put in this book that I felt was totally unnecessary. It did not need to be there at all. And I wish the pages dedicated to that romance had gone into fleshing out a couple of the ideas that were brought up in the book, and also the ending, because the ending is a little lackluster. Alright, the next book I'm going to mention is Retribution Rails by Erin Bowman. Of course, this is the companion note to Vengeance Road, and I really liked this. I ended up giving it a 4 stars, and I thought it was a really solid companion to Vengeance Road. I found this book just as much fun as Vengeance Road was. I like how this book totally sets the tone for a Western. It feels like a Western. Like, this book is so easy to imagine in your head, both because of Erin Bowman's writing, but because of the mood she sets for this novel. Like, you literally can watch it in your head play out as a Western. There are also characters from Vengeance Road that make an appearance in this, and I was so happy that they did. I was so ecstatic when that happened, and I pretty much just gushed. This book follows our two main characters, Reese and Charlotte, and basically they have to team up to take down a group of bandits called the Rose Riders. Reese is actually a member of the Rose Riders, and Charlotte is a journalist. And the two basically meet and, like I said, end up having to take the Rose Riders down. I didn't like this quite as much as I enjoyed Vengeance Road. I still thought it was a solid companion. Ultimately, I just kind of wish there wasn't a romance in this one. I would have liked this book, I think, a lot more if Charlotte and Reese just remained friends, because I personally didn't see, like, any romantic feelings between them. Like, I just couldn't believably pick up on that. And so that is the one thing I didn't like about this book. But I do think this, again, is a really solid companion. The last book I'm going to mention, my favorite book of the month, was Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars as well. But I really liked this. I know a lot of people kind of complain about the second and third books in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, but I have to admit I really enjoyed this. I think the strongest and the most interesting part of this story is the world. I find the Grishaverse so fascinating, and I love being able to learn more and more about this world. And I feel like this book did a really good job of expanding the world. You know, we got to see places beyond Ravka, and we got to learn a little bit about different places and different groups of people. There's also several characters who were introduced in this book that I really liked, Nikolai being among them. I also really liked Toya and Tamar, and I really liked Alina in this book. I really liked how we got to see Alina make tough choices in this book. You know, Leigh Bardugo put some really tough choices in front of Alina, and we got to see her make them. You know, and she committed to making each one of those choices. She was like, yeah, both of these options have really horrible consequences. I have to choose the one that's going to be for the best. And I really liked that, and I find that I really like Alina too. Now, my least favorite thing about this book, and probably about this trilogy as a whole, is that I cannot stand Mal. I will never like the character that is the best friend who's in love with the main character and basically just acts like a total jerk because of the fact that she is not reciprocating his feelings every freaking second. And that is 100% who Mal is. Mal spends this entire book being angry with Alina because she's not spending time with him, but like we also never see him push to spend time with her either, and so he's like accusing her of not loving him because she's not making an effort to spend time with him, but it's okay for him not to also do the same. Also, he basically spends this entire book telling Alina that he doesn't love who she's becoming, but it's like, bruh, you never took the time to love her when she was the person you're claiming to love, so I'm not really sure why you think you have any right to complain about who she's becoming. Oh man, I really hate Mal, and every time he like opens his stupid mouth. Shut up, stop talking, leave, please. The door's right there, please, I'm begging you, leave. So like, that is just, oh, I hate Mal so much. And yeah, I really liked this book. I thought this was a really fun story. I really liked Alina's character. I just hate Max so much. Alrighty guys, so that was my November wrap-up. I can already tell I rambled a lot about all these books, so I'm definitely gonna have to do some quick editing to not make this video super long. You guys should let me know down below what was your favorite and maybe least favorite reads in the month of November. I post videos Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and I'll see you guys soon with another one.